In the cold, dark night of April 14th, 1912, Titanic lookouts Frederick Fleet and Redegald Lee were stationed in the ship's crow's nest, looking out for any incoming icebergs. At approximately 11:40 p.m. ship's time, Frederick spotted the silhouette of a 400-foot-long and 100-foot-high iceberg, and immediately contacted First Officer William Murdoch, who ordered the ship hard to starboard, as well as the engines to be reversed. His efforts would not be rewarded, though, as shortly after giving this command, Titanic struck the iceberg, and 2.5 hours later would founder, taking 1,500 souls with her. On arrival to New York, the press, as well as common people, had many questions. Why did so many people die? What contributed to the great loss of life? And what changes would be made so that something like this would never happen again? Today, we will answer these questions, as well as explain the impact the sinking had on the industry. Even before the Carpathia had arrived in New York, investigations from both the United States and the United Kingdom were being planned out to figure out what had happened and what could be done to prevent such a disaster from happening again. Each of the inquiries took testimonies from both the passengers and crew of Titanic, the crew of the Californian, and Captain Arthur Rostrom of the Carpathia. In the end, the two inquiries came to the conclusion that Captain Smith, the captain of Titanic, had not taken the proper precautions after being given several iceberg warnings, and the large loss of life were the cause of non-sufficient lifeboats, which had not been updated for ships Titanic and Olympic size. Even the lifeboats available, though, were not properly filled to capacity, so a lifeboat with a capacity of 60 to 70, for example, would only be filled to 20. Neither White Star Line or the International Mercantile Marine Company were found guilty, though, as they were technically following the regulations set by the Board of Trade. It was decided, though, to update the regulations for modern ships, as they were clearly out of date. The most well-known update would come from the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, which was passed in 1914. With this law, all ships, no matter the size, would have to carry sufficient lifeboats for all lives on board. It would also require ships to carry out mandated lifeboat drills, as well as inspections of the lifeboats. This law would continue to be updated throughout the years, the first of which were new rules for the life-saving appliances like life rafts, life buoys, and life jackets. This was implemented by the Board of Trade on May 8, 1914, and went into full force in June of the same year after a meeting in Liverpool by shipping companies. 2 years earlier, the Radio Act of 1912 was passed, which stated that radio communications on passenger ships would be operated 24 hours a day in order not to miss a distress call. It also required ships to maintain contact with other vessels, since during Titanic's main voyage, wireless operator Jack Phillips straight up ignored messages from other ships. This was best shown when he allegedly told wireless operator Firmstone Evans of the Californian to shut up after being given several iceberg warnings during the voyage. When the Radio Act of 1912 was passed, it was agreed that the firing of red rockets from a ship must be interpreted as a sign of distress. This was decided at the last minute, since during the Titanic sinking, the inexperienced crew of the Californian yet again ignored the flares from the Titanic, since they weren't in a specific order that signaled distress. Even before Titanic had its collision with an iceberg, many ships before it had suffered a similar fate. In fact, between 1882 and 1890, 14 vessels had foundered due to ice and over 40 damaged. All these disasters had caused a discussion over the possible implementation of a corporation that could deal with the ice, but Titanic's disaster is quite literally the tip of the iceberg. In 1912, shortly after the disaster, the Board of Trade chartered the bark Scotia for service as a weather ship in the Grand Banks of Newfoundland. The crew aboard kept a lookout for icebergs that could pose a threat to passing ships, reporting the information to stations off the coast of Newfoundland via a Marconi wireless set installed on the ship. Eventually, in November 12, 1913, a board meeting in London held by the International Conference for the Safety of Life at Sea established an official corporation responsible for the control of icebergs. Ever since then, there hasn't been a single known case of a lost ship due to ice. Even to this day, the impact of Titanic's sinking can still be seen. Many books and movies have been made on the ship, the most popular being James Cameron's 1997 movie Titanic, which won 11 Oscars at the Academy Awards. There has also been many museums dedicated to the ship, most of which even holding artifacts from the wreck. There is no doubt the Titanic has had the biggest impact of any ship sinking, but the question is, does she even deserve it? Does Titanic even deserve to be famous?